So as you notice, we are not in the garage. We're actually in my basement because my basement is probably about 30 degrees warmer than outside right now, and my garage is not much warmer than outside. I do have a wood-burning stove in my garage, but it is a multi-level garage, so it takes a while to heat up, and I'm just not gonna start up a stove to just be out there for a couple hours. So today what we're gonna do is we're going to depin, or not depin per se, but we're gonna do our best to take apart this loom, dissect it, and mark what we want to keep, and mark what those things are. Cut out, remove the things that we're not going to use, and start making a cut list, so to speak, for what we need to add. Or potentially also rearranging what needs to be rearranged as far as locations and all that. Locations will mostly stay the same, but it's still good to just go through the process of tearing this apart, just to go through it all, make sure everything's in good shape. A lot of this we're not going to reuse. Some of it we are, but we can shrink wrap it and everything after we've got it set up the way we want and all of our circuits added that we need to add. All right, let's get to work. I've been at this less than 5 minutes. This is what you're in for, by the way. Especially if your valve cover looks like this, guess what? The wiring harness is gonna look like it too. If I'm honest, I don't really have all the right tools out here for this right now, but that's fine. I can make do generally with a knife. Any good knife will do. I've just sharpened my knife, so it is nice and sharp. And as such, I'm gonna be very careful when I'm cutting these kinds of sections here that are right up against the wire. I don't want to cut through the plastic jacket on the wiring. So I'm just trying to make a score so I can tear the tape. I'm doing my best to just be careful with it. That's my point. And you could do this with a lot better tools. Having some flush cut pliers or also some diagonal cutters are really handy. Don't mind that. Some of these are really obvious to me. That's a starter, guaranteed. I know exactly what that is, where it came from. It sits right next to the alternator. If you have to look between these two and wonder which one's the alternator, just think about it for a second. Which one requires more than just one pin in a ground? So this would be your main lug, positive to the starter from the battery. This goes to the starter solenoid, actually triggered. This also has a giant lug with a big fat wire, but it's also right next to a multi-pin connector. There's 4 pins there, 4 wires on the back. That's not going to your starter, that's your alternator. And you can see here, there's just a small little section that then goes to somewhere into the ECU loom or something. I don't need this to be part of my ECU loom at all. I'm not sure how I'm gonna wire it just yet, but now I've got it labeled. I know I'm gonna keep that, reuse those connectors if I can, or at least have a reference to what the OEM used. And also a nice OEM boot that's still in good shape. It's nice and pliable, it's not cracking. I can definitely reuse that even if I don't reuse the wire. Here's another reason why you check over your harness. Don't just assume other people's work is great. I just pulled on this gently, maybe a little bit more than gently, but it was not hard. And this came right off. I don't even know what this was to yet. It's a single pin to something, but it's literally just twisted together and then had the sheath put back over it. The wire under here is red. The wire on this pin is black. This was modified by somebody, some kind of repair or something, I don't know. But I may not even need this, I may not even care. But what if this was something else? What if this was to my idle air control or something else? Check over your harness, don't just assume it's good. I made sure to have a laptop handy like I was saying in the last video, so I can pull up my wiring diagrams and check things. So I'm still not sure what this wire is. I'm gonna have to do some more digging online to find out. It might be a knock sensor. That's not, I think, so likely because there's another spot for a knock sensor on the harness. What it could be is another thing that's locationally very close is the air conditioner solenoid, like turn your AC on and off, which makes me wonder, right? Like, what if somebody had their AC repaired at some point and somebody didn't do a good job or did a home job and didn't do a very good job, and then that car was passed on to somebody else and the air conditioning stops working, and does that end up becoming does that become an influencing factor as to why that car is pulled off the road and the engine ends up in my hands? I don't know. I mean, you know, older car, people get wary because it's got this problem and that problem. What if those problems are simply poor repairs or literally something that could have been fixed in half an hour with all the right tools on hand? So, just ideas, thoughts, you know, ruminations, what that word, whatever it is. It's fancy. I was trying to use fancy words for you guys. By the way, for any of you super OCD wiring people out there, your positives have to be red because down the road, you want people to understand what the heck is going on. OEM alternator positive. They made it black. I mean, I'm not entirely mad at them about it, but I mean, it is a curious choice. Probably just to make it easy to distinguish between, if you're digging into the harness, whether or not you're touching the starter positive or the alternator positive. They don't want those to be the same color, but I don't know. It's one of those oddities, right? Guess what? OEMs aren't nearly as OCD about wiring as most of us in the private sector doing our own hobbyist stuff. Trying my best to save this boot. I don't know if any of my holes in my firewall are nearly the right size, but I mean, if I can reuse it, why not, right? But man, tape after this many years, almost any kind of tape is just going to be pure gum. I know there's people that love Tesa tape and people that hate it because it turns into gum after a short time under heat, thermal load. That's probably fair and accurate. I don't have enough experience to tell you firsthand, but I do know that over time, all tape degrades. Not much you can do about it. So do what you can, but just know that if it's been 10 years, it's gonna be a mess taking it apart. That just is what it is. Another reason why it's not always a bad idea to take your harness apart like this, if you've never done it especially, you learn how OEMs tape and how they do joints like this, where they'll start on a main branch, circle around, bring in their next branch, and circle around that, and then go between, and then weave, and then terminate on the main branch that they've just created. There's a lot of little techniques like that you can pick up on just seeing how OEMs put things together that will hopefully lead to you making a better harness when you go to rewrap it yourself. Now here we get to see a feature that you don't normally see on wiring diagrams on your factory service manual. This tape has one wire going in, two wires going out. That is a factory splice between two different connections, probably powering, sharing power for some kind of a circuit, or sharing a sensor ground or something like that. This is perfectly acceptable in the way they've done it, which again goes back to reverse engineering what the OEMs did to learn for yourself how you can do it or should do it isn't a bad idea. So let me cut open one of these and we'll see how they did their splice, or maybe not cut open per se, but remove all of the tape from one of these joints. So you probably won't be able to see this on camera very well, but this is the second piece of tape I've removed from this one splice. All they've done is they've rolled the edge over, and they didn't even try to get it like sometimes when you're thinking you're gonna tape something, you try to get the edge of the tape right on the seam. They don't even bother with that. They stick it under, they go over almost a full inch, and then they roll it around itself with it not sticking to itself for several turns because they're rolling tape against, backside to backside, until eventually they get through and they start taping. So I've almost got this off, and then we can have a look and see what kind of splice that they used. Exactly as I expected. Lighting here kind of sucks, I'm sorry, but look. It's really basic butt connection. They've stripped the wires back probably 5 times more than they needed. Doesn't matter, they taped over it. And guess what? That splice has lasted 20 years now almost. Kept the car running for probably 200,000 miles, maybe more. That splice was just fine. Honda called it good enough. Nissan does the same thing. I'm sure everybody else does the same thing. That's all you need to get a splice on an OEM level quality. Don't overthink it. Guess what? They didn't use solder. Guess what? No heat shrink. Now, keep in mind, you see how they staggered their splices? There's a splice here, then a splice here, then a splice here. They're not all in the same spot. Keeps the thicknesses consistent so you don't have a big bulky section next to where there's a bunch of splices together. Also, it's in a section with a lot of other wires that are all being held together. This isn't sitting here flopping around like this constantly. It's not, so it's not seeing a whole lot of vibration. It's not seeing a whole lot of bending. and it's not being moved around constantly, even for maintenance. This is going to be the ECU side inside the dash. You're not bending this around constantly for maintenance. General maintenance, top end stuff like pulling off the intake and having to pull off the injector wiring, we'll see what that looks like. But this was not under any high amounts of repetitive motion. So that kind of a splice, just fine. So of course, the awesome resources I found cover everything up there. I don't know what this is. If I had to guess, think about it, this is a drive-by-wire harness. I'm betting this is the connector that goes to the pedal, or more specifically, there's, if I recall correctly, Hondas have a cable system that goes up to a drive-by-wire sensor box in the engine bay. So it's still a cable throttle from the pedal to the engine bay. Here's my engine bay separator. Everything, this is under the dash. Just into the engine bay, this guy hangs out. So what I'll do real quick is I'll Google search TSX, Accurate TSX drive-by-wire pedal connector and see what I find. No doubt, absolutely, that's the drive-by-wire connector, which means I know I'm not going to need this because I'm going to be using a cable throttle, but I'm going to leave the connector on here for now, so that way I can hopefully correlate that to any of the sensors up at the throttle, because I do need a TPS sensor, and there should be enough wires, if not the right wires already, for TPS, because that is something that essentially they're talking back and forth with, is the position sensor of the throttle. So keep deconstructing, just keep going. By the way, when I'm cutting down the length of this stuff, I want to be careful that I'm not going to punch through the hole. So if I'm applying good amounts of pressure, normally what I'm doing is I'm trying to have my knife laying just next to it, and then it'll just break with the tension there. And then you can just kind of pull on it and yank it off. If you want to go right on the slit, just make sure you're pressing soft and not getting your knife dug in there too much. See, just like that. I didn't cut, I was about a 1/4 inch away from the slit, and as soon as I had the cut in it, it just comes right off. I'll show you again. So I can see the seam of it. That would be cutting on the seam. I'm just gonna go just to the side. Comes right off. And all the tape comes with it. I know I'm not damaging the wires that way, and I could still technically reuse this if I really wanted to, although I'll probably just get all new stuff just because this stuff does get pretty crumbly from the years in heat. Usually if you create a break, you can then figure out which direction it's going. This is going underneath itself, so I know it's going that way. So, but now I'm underneath something else. So this is the joy of it. Finding your ends and working on them. You could sit here with the razor blade and just cut them all. You just got to be a little bit more careful that way. I kind of like to be a little bit firmer with my work piece. I don't want to sit here and be gentle all night. So I'll probably refrain from using the knife where I know I can get away with just being a bit firm with my application. So you can see our TPS wiring is actually going 2 directions. This is probably a common sensor reference would be my guess. That's going to go up to the drive-by wire, and then the rest of them are going back down to the ECU. Here's another little tip that the OEM is leaving us. I just undid a huge section, but underneath there was this. So as they're laying it out, they go over a section just to keep the bundle tight while they then continue to work. It's a good tip. Unfortunately, I think I have to pause for a moment. It's starting to get late in the evening. I need to go cook dinner. But this is pretty good progress for just an hour's work. I'll come back down a little bit and we'll continue and get the rest of this. I'll probably bring more tools down with me, because one thing is that this is gonna need a small flat nose, a flathead screwdriver to pick at all the little clips. I'd rather not just cut through it all. So that's fine. I'll bring some more supplies down with me when I come back to this. All right, well, it's been a little bit longer than I anticipated, but that's cool. I got some good family time in. So I happened to come across this. I was doing other stuff. This works probably sharper on average than my everyday carry knife, but that was also just sharpened, so it's been working good. But I more prefer these, the scraper blades or safety razors, you might think of them. I don't know. I think they have a few different names, but razor blade with a protected side. Generally, these are designed to go into a scraper. My dad, who installed windows for some time in his career, back when you actually put glass in windows, didn't just put frames in, prefab vinyls. He always used these for like cleaning glass, and taught me how to use these back when I was, gosh, probably like 9. To use them and not cut yourself and use them safely. These are very sharp, just like these are, and I don't know. Use your own discretion. Don't be dumb. Don't cut your hand open. Yeah. I also grab a micro flathead, number 1, I don't know, whatever. Some diagonal cutters and some pliers because they were next to the diagonal cutters. So let's get messy again. Some Honda guy was watching me do that going, "What the hell are you doing, dude?" I don't know. In that section is 4 splices that are a style I haven't seen before, but I don't work on I haven't taken apart a lot of newer harnesses, so I don't know. You guys can tell me if you've seen stuff like this before. I'll get one of these cleaned up and show you a little bit closer in a moment. All right, so this is like impossible to see this light. I am sorry, but there was a cap over the top, like so, and then it was taped here in the back to keep it there. But if I look really closely, this looks like it, I don't know, there's a term for it. I don't know the proper term for it though, but it's like some type of like compression welding where they squeeze this together really tight and it essentially like friction welds itself together through the crimping process. But it's essentially, it looks and feels like solid copper kind of. They're not individual strands you can just easily take off. That's really interesting. I haven't seen something like that before. But these are all branching right here where they're probably, I'm guessing 12-volt positives, maybe some grounds that are going out to different connections. We'll untangle up this mess and see if we can figure that out. Oh man, more wires just twisted together. Lovely. And a pretty beat up connector too. That's problematic. Whatever that goes to, if I need it, I'm gonna have to replace the connector, which is fine. It's just, again, evidence that this engine may not have been running well and could have just been wiring. Hodgepodge repairs. People break things and go to fix it and don't do a very good job. Somebody wasn't doing a good job taking care of it. So this is actually in pretty good shape, but again, I'm glad I go through everything because that clip's broken. So these are the injectors, which I need to verify work. I'm not 100% positive the connectors are the same between F20Cs and K24s. But yeah, the injectors themselves look fine. This one, it might be salvageable, I don't know. I'll have to go check it out on the engine. But I think that's as far as I'm gonna get tonight. I wish I would have gotten farther, but that's fine. It is what it is. I have not cut a single wire off. I haven't cut a single connector off. Look at all these. All kinds of wires that don't have connectors. Luckily, they all kind of go to the same section, so I should be able to figure out what they are. They might be part of the power sub harness. I kind of doubt that. Maybe they go to the exhaust, like the O2 sensors and stuff. I don't know. More homework. I've got a mental list. I'll probably end up coming back down here tomorrow during a break at work or something and collect some more notes with cleaner hands. Take some pictures of different connectors so that I can go back and figure out what some more of this stuff is so I can label it more. As always, keep jamming.